Matt Muchagrosso here, creator of Xenoplicity and the Q system it runs on. Today's video, we're going to talk about game master advice. How do you game master? What's the proper approach to do it? What are some tricks of the trade? How do you make that work? Let's say you've never done it before and you want to get into it. Or maybe you've been doing it for a long time and you're looking for maybe some tips or maybe some good advice for someone who's been doing it for quite a while. Well, let's just kind of jump right into it. So if you're going to be a game master, first things first, you need to be cool with improv, okay? Because the truth is, you really don't know what your players are going to do in any given session. Maybe they kind of stick with what you've got prepped, but often they won't. And the truth is, it really comes down to this. You can't see the future. You can't predict what they're going to do. And sometimes, to no fault of the players, sometimes maybe the way that the dice results are and the actions that the characters make in the game that make perfect sense for who those characters are and whatnot. Sometimes these things can just guide the story down a path that you just couldn't have predicted. This has happened more times than not with me. And so you have to be comfortable with just kind of going with the flow. Okay. I know this may not sound super helpful, but it really is, because when you let go, when you kind of just let loose those reins and you realize that it doesn't all have to fit together perfectly and it doesn't all have to jive with what you had thought it was going to be. And when that's your mentality, you're cool with it kind of just going whatever direction it naturally flows. And that's what you have to realize, right? It's kind of one of those things where it's more of an art than a science, okay? And so you have to be okay with that. And you get better at this the longer you do it. But kind of going in with this, you cannot be a perfectionist. You cannot imagine that everything has to be perfect, because it never will. And if you're the kind of person that doesn't want to try to do something until you know you can do it good, well, then you're never going to start doing it, okay? So don't let that concept of trying to be great at it or be a perfectionist at it, don't let that stop you from just jumping into it, okay? Game mastering is very simple, and a lot of times people put it on a pedestal and they make it more than it really is. And so when you do that, you kind of build this idea up in your head. You psych yourself out of it, okay? So don't do that. Don't do that. It doesn't matter whether you're playing for strangers, whether you're playing for your best friends. You're the guy that is the impartial judge. You're the referee. You're the dungeon master. Whatever you call yourself, depending on the game. At the end of the day, your job is basically just to guide the session and make judgment calls on the rules, and let the players have the freedom to kind of do what they want. Okay, so if a lot of times at the game, you may kind of have all these things in your mind of what you're going to have to do, but when the game actually starts, you find that as a game master, a lot of your time is spent really just sitting back and listening to what the players want to do and what they're thinking about doing, and then what they choose to do, and then debating amongst themselves and talking about what they want to do. And while all that's going on, while you're listening to them converse with each other and interact with things in the game, you might have to role play an NPC from time to time, or kind of set the scene or set the stage, depending on if you're in a city or the wilderness, things like that. Describe what the characters are seeing and what they are encountering. But beyond that, you have a lot of free time during the game session to basically listen to what it is they're trying to do, what they want to do, and then play off that, okay? And make little notes as you go through the session for various things. And at the end of the game session, you can always compile those notes into a better format that's easier to understand, and read, for you to remember to go forward in future sessions. You can pull from what they've already done and who they've already encountered, okay? But a big thing is not over prepping, not over planning. This is really important, guys. You don't need to have everything figured out. You really don't. As a game master does not need to know the solution to a riddle or a problem. They just need to present the riddle or the problem. Let the players be the ones that figure out how to overcome it. Okay. Pose a riddle to them. You don't need to know the answer. If they say something that makes sense and sounds good, sure, go with it. Okay. If you present a problem in the game world, you don't need to have the solution. Let them use their ingenuity and their creativity to create a solution. And then when they do, if it makes sense, if it narratively fits, then let them have it. Let them have that victory. It's a mistake to come up with a problem and then think of one solution for it that you think is so clever. And then whatever they try to throw at it, you just say, nope, 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 nope. That doesn't work. That doesn't work. That is terrible game mastering, because they may never guess that one solution that you have thought up in your head. They're not you, and you're not them. They may come up with a solution that actually is better than anything you could have possibly thought of. But if you're so stubborn or prideful, or rigid, that you can't let them have that victory, that it has to be what you thought and the way you imagined it, well, you're going to rob yourself of the fun of being surprised as a game master. I mean, one of the real joys as a game master is sitting back and being impressed by what your players come up with. It's really cool. You may be playing the opposition in a sense, right? You're playing the resistance to whatever it is they're wanting. But that doesn't make you antagonistic to the players, right? I may be playing their enemies as the game master, and I might be playing the world that is trying to push back and not let them have their way with whatever they're trying to achieve. But I'm also rooting for their success. I want them to succeed. Me as a player sitting at the table playing with my friends, I want the other players to succeed because a game master is a player too. And so, you got to have that proper perspective, right? You want to challenge your group and you want to challenge the players and you want to give them some pushback to see, what they do when push comes to shove. But at the end of the day, I want them to be successful. I'm rooting for them. And but they have to step up to that challenge. They have to meet it. And when they do, I let them have those victories. And I'm happy about that. Often, whatever I have prepared, my players will come up with a solution that I had not foreseen, that I could not have imagined that's what they were going to do. And even playing with them for years, they still surprise me. And when I play a module, modules are fine. There's nothing wrong with playing a module. But when I play a module, when I've got a module out and I'm running a module for my group, often they will come up with a solution that is meeting the spirit of what the module is, but it's not at all the way the module goes. And so I have to be willing to throw out certain things and just run with whatever direction they take it. Because that's the essence of tabletop role-playing. That is the essence of the game we're playing, is that, you don't want to make there only be one solution. You have to be open to improv and to just kind of taking it whatever direction that it goes naturally at the table. That's where the real fun begins. And most of the time when I'm playing a module and it goes off the rails, if you want to call it that, and it starts taking on a life of its own and it's going in this totally new direction that there's nothing in the book or module that would give me advice at that point, because it's just so far gone from what the author had wrote. I find that those are the moments where the table is having the most fun. That is usually the moment where the players are high-fiving each other and laughing and excited the most because they've made it their own. They've taken this and they've molded it into something new and original and creative. And that's exactly what you want your table to do, right? Mission accomplished. It doesn't have to go the way you thought. It just has to go somewhere. And then you can play off that in future sessions. And this is good. This is a good thing. So you want to applaud that. You want to encourage that at your table. So there's nothing wrong with railroading to an extent, right? If I have my players come up over the horizon and they see a town before them, I've railroaded them, right? Because at the end of the day, they know, well, that's the place they're headed. They were going to the next town. The town I present, that's going to set the stage for the adventure once they enter that town. if I've planned a dungeon and they cross over that hilltop and they see a dungeon before them, and that's where they were headed. They were looking for adventure. They were looking for treasure, whatever. They're going to go into this dungeon. Well, I've just railroaded them to an extent. I've created boundaries and barriers. I've created a stage that they're going to then play off of. So I've set the stage, right? That's a railroad. There's nothing wrong with that. Where railroading becomes an issue is when you start trying to say, well, there's only one way to do this thing, and this is the way it's got to go, and any other solution is wrong. That's ridiculous. Don't act like that. You're constraining imagination. You never want to constrain imagination, right? Set boundaries so the imagination can go wild. That is at the core what you should be doing as a game master. So a lot of this is more like philosophical, more like mentality aspects of game mastering and the right attitude to have at the table, right? So let's kind of get more grounded. What are some good advice that you can do as a game master? Okay, number one, time management. Time management is super important as a game master. You need to be watching your clock. Okay. Now, this doesn't mean that you want to like have a timer out at the table, like, counting down seconds. You can use timers in a game, like a die. And I think that that's a useful tool, like to create a sense of urgency at the table for the players. Okay, that's fine. That's not what I'm really talking about. I'm talking about you need to be keeping track of how much time you've got left in the whole session. If you know your players have to stop playing at 11 p.m. because they have to get home, maybe they have families to go to or they have work the next day, whatever, you need to be keeping an eye on the clock. And if it's 10:30 and you're going into a new encounter that you know is going to take a while, then you need to pause the game and say, hey guys, we got 30 minutes left before we need to start wrapping up so everybody can get home on time. But this encounter may run longer than that. Like, are we cool with that, or do we want to leave off here? There's nothing wrong with that, and that's actually a good habit to have as a game master. Watch the clock, understand how much time you have left, and gauge what it is you're throwing at the characters. You don't want to start an encounter that you can't finish. Because it's difficult. It's difficult to keep track of things, especially depending on the game you're playing. That might result in having like a lot of hit points to keep track of and a lot of notes you need to take. And to avoid that, you want to find a good stopping spot for your game session. And so with that in mind, keep an eye on the clock. And if you've got plenty of time, great, keep going. But if you start to see that you're running out of time and you had X, Y, and Z that you wanted to get to, you might need to skip over a certain aspects of what you had prepared to just kind of get to the end game kind of the session where you wanted to leave off. Or you just need to be okay with pausing the game at a good stopping spot before another encounter starts or another fight happens or they go into another room of a dungeon. And that way you're not picking up in an awkward place. Because again, you want to leave off in a place where you could like pause the game and everyone come back the next session, whenever that is, and not need to keep track of a bunch of like minutia. So to avoid that, find a good stopping spot and then just leave off there. And if it means you wrap up a little early, so be it. That's cool. You get excited about the next time you play because you're going into it in a good spot that it's not like a bunch of hassle to trying to remember where everybody was and positions and everything. This is especially true if you're playing with grid and minis because you can't guarantee that your board's not going to get moved or pieces aren't going to get knocked off between now and a whole week if you leave it out on a table. Another thing about keeping track of time is understand that you only want to spend about 2 to 3 minutes per player on a turn. And this is really key, guys. Like I can't stress this enough. If you are running a game session, right? Let's say you got 4 players. If everybody takes 5 minutes, it's going to be 20 minutes before that round of turns is over. That is excessively long, okay? So you want to keep it more to the 2-minute mark. Again, if you have like say 5 players and each person's playing for 2 minutes and you move on, well, it's going to take 10 minutes to get around that table. You have to be mindful of this. And this is really important. This is again a really pivotal part of running the game, keeping track of time. If I've got 4 players on my table and the first guy takes 10 minutes just with me and him. That means the other 3 players have sat there for 10 minutes not playing the game. Don't do that. It's rude, it's inconsiderate. The other players are just sitting there twiddling their thumbs. Don't let one player hog the spotlight. You gotta toggle between the players at your table every 2 to 3 minutes. And this way, no one feels neglected, everyone stays engaged. Like inevitably, and to an extent, it's not even their fault. If you let a player sit at your table for 10 minutes without addressing them, without coming to them, without engaging with them at the table, you can't blame them for starting to doodle on their page, or maybe pulling out their phone and checking their social media, or looking up funny videos, or maybe breaking out in a small conversation with another player that's also being ignored. Like, you don't want those habits at your table, right? And you tell players not to do those things, but don't give them a window of time where they're bored, because they came here to play a game, and so you need to give them an avenue to do that. So every 2 to 3 minutes is, I found to be the sweet spot. I'll give you an example. Let's say you're playing Vampire the Masquerade, and all the characters are going to Elysium. They're going to have like a social scene where they're all at a party, okay? And you can do this too for D&D, like at a masquerade ball or whatever. It doesn't matter. Whatever part, maybe a party in the tavern. They're all at a tavern drinking and carousing. Whatever situation you find yourself in, okay? You paint that picture in your mind's eye. You've got 4 players. They're all going to be doing various different things. A lot of them are going to be interacting with different NPCs. Maybe one wants to get into a drinking contest. Another one wants to dance on the dance floor. Another one wants to have a serious conversation with someone that they met. Okay, you see what I'm saying? Spend 2 to 3 minutes with each player and say, okay, player 1, you're going to the bar, you want to get into a drinking contest. You meet some guys up there, you start drinking, you start pounding down tankards of ale or whatever. Make a roll for your constitution or whatever, or stamina, or whatever it is the game is, the rule is for that game. And then quickly switch over to the next one. Okay, player 2, you're on the dance floor, you're trying to bust some cool moves and get people to start, checking you out and everything, like make a dexterity roll or whatever for dancing. Cool, awesome. You're doing that, and then you narrate the results. Player 3, you're over here trying to have a serious conversation. Make that roll and narrate. Tell me really quick what it is you're saying. How are you starting this conversation? You spend just 2 to 3 minutes setting the scene and having a die roll real quick if one's warranted, and then you move to the next one. You move to the next one. You move to the next one, and then when you cycle back, then you do a follow up with that encounter, with that little scene, okay? So when we wrap back around after 2 or 3 minutes each, I go back to the person at the bar doing the drinking contest. Okay, well now someone comes over and they spill a beer on you. What do you do? Okay, cool. We do that for another 2 or 3 minutes, and then I go to the next guy. Blah 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 blah. And I'm just gonna do this repeatedly, right? I just keep going. At each round, I'm going to pose a different little moment to kind of pit at them, which could be resolved with a single roll or a little bit of flair and narration, or just a little back and forth play between me and them, okay? And then I'm going to toggle back. And so if you do this and you do this consistently, everyone feels engaged, even though they're all doing different things. This is important. They all feel like they're doing something at the same time in the same scene, but they're all engaged in their own little thing. They're not interacting with each other whatsoever, but they're all doing something that's important to their character. This is important, and this is the way you should do this. What you don't want to do is say, okay, player 1, you're going to the bar to get into a drinking contest. Let's, you meet these guys, and they'll start making some rolls, and then this person comes over and does this, and this person, and before you know it, it's been 20 minutes, and you're just still on player 1 doing this with player 1. Meanwhile, player 2, 3, and 4 haven't got to play the game at all, and they're basically just sitting there bored watching you interact with this one character, this one player. Don't do that. Again, there's an aspect of being considerate of everybody's time. There's also the aspect of keeping everybody engaged at the table so you don't get distractions. And you want the players to be interested in what the other players are doing, but that doesn't happen in long bouts. That only is going to happen in small little spurts, okay? So because people have an attention span. So you have to recognize that, right? And so use this kind of just the toggle method, okay, in how to handle a scene where the players are all doing different things. This is also true for combat. Let's say I've got 4 characters, they're in a dungeon, you got an adventuring party, and the path splits 2 ways. And I've had people tell me, well, I don't like it when my group splits the party. Because I don't want to run 2 different encounters at the same time. You see a lot of advice on YouTube where these, professional, influencers in the hobby will tell you things like never split the party. Oh, it's a train wreck, blah, 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 blah. It's all much nonsense. You can split the party all you want. Yeah, it might make fights more difficult, but the whole idea of a fight being unbalanced and that making a situation more difficult, that is a very unique problem to D&D and level-based systems in general. You don't, if you're playing a lot of other systems or you're playing different games, that may or may not even matter, okay? So I don't even like that as being an advice for why not to do this. It's a bunch of nonsense. You can split the party all you want. And if the players are being clever and they're being creative, it shouldn't be an issue at all. Not every situation warrants a fight to begin with. You might have someone with like a cloak of invisibility where they're just trying to scout out an area, and so they're kind of going off in their own direction. You might have a person casting a spell on themselves to make themselves like obfuscated, or using a power that they have so where they can't be seen or heard. There's all kinds of reasons to split the party, and maybe they do get into a fight. But at the end of the day, like, they can still use tactics, they can still use ingenuity to get around things, or maybe to take out multiple opponents with sneak attacks. There's all kinds of ways to do this and it not be a total party kill situation. And it may not even be a fight. It might just be a recon mission, or just various things happening in different locations that have to be addressed at the same time for a mission. That can come up in Shadowrun all the time. So again, the split the party thing, let's just break this down. The idea that 2 encounters to run at the same time is any different than 1 encounter where they're all together, it's totally made up in your own head. It doesn't really exist. Let me explain. So back to my example. I got 4 characters that go into a dungeon. The path splits. You can go left, you can go right. Where do you go? Let's say we have 2 characters go down path 1, and we have 2 characters go down path 2. They've now split the party. Characters 1 and 2, they come to a door. Beyond the door, there's a pit of lava with a bridge going across. They have to get across it. Okay? Fair enough. All right, I toggle over to party 2. Party 2, you're going down the hallway, the second hallway. You come to a door. You enter it, and there's some bad guys in there. A couple of goons, and they come charging at you. Okay, now a fight's broke out. Now I've got 2 characters in a fight, and 2 characters trying to cross like an obstacle. Okay, like a lava pit kind of situation. What do you do, right? So this is what you do. Player 1, you're in the room. You're trying to get across the lava. How are you tackling this? What are you doing? I'm going to use a grappling hook. I'm going to try to attach it to some rocks. I'm going to swing across. Okay, great. Make a roll. Boom, you succeed. Okay, great. You attach the grappling hook and swing across. All right, player 2, you see him doing that. What are you doing? I'm going to try to balance and trying to cross this little ledge that crosses the lava. Okay, great. Cool. Make your roll. Okay, awesome. You balanced. You're about halfway there. You're doing that. Player 3, a goon comes running at you. Now, these are not happening in the same scene, right? But I'm treating them as if it's all happening simultaneously all together. I'm just going to go around the table and handle this. Everyone is getting equal amount of attention. It doesn't really matter that they're not physically together because, and this is the thing you have to kind of wrap your mind around, none of it's real. These are all imaginary things happening in your imagination, in your mind. Even if you're drawing them out on a map, let's say you're drawing out, you just draw a line down the map that you've got, your battle map, your battle grid, and just draw out one encounter on one side and the other encounter on the other side. But it's all imaginary. If you're using theater of the mind, especially, this is really irrelevant. It doesn't matter that they're in different places doing different things. Treat it all as if it's all happening simultaneously together in the same place. All you're doing is just changing your narration a bit. But again, that's all just in the minds of the players. So it doesn't need to all be happening at the same place at the same time. So player 3 goes, they attack the goon attacks them. Great. Player 4 goes, they attack the goon attacks them. And then I go back to player 1. Okay, player 1, you've swung across, you've made it to the other side, and a dog comes running down the hallway and starts trying to bite your legs. Okay, cool, roll for that. Okay, player 2, you're halfway across the ledge. You see your friend being attacked on the other side. Make another roll to clear the rest of the way of the ledge. Okay, awesome. Player number three, player three, the goon is attacking you. You know, how are you responding? What are you doing? Okay, we roll for the attack. Okay, great. This is what happens in the fight. Player four, roll to attack. And you're just going to keep doing that. You're just going to go around the table, everyone getting an equal amount of time, 2 to 3 minutes, to do a quick narration, a quick die roll, and then you move on to the next player. And so you're role playing all this happening simultaneously. Again, what you don't want to do is you don't want to say, okay, player one and player two, you're in the lava pit, so we're gonna roll for this, and then when they get to the other side, we're gonna have a dog attack them, and you play out this 10, 15, 20-minute scene, and then the other players that are went the other direction have had nothing to do for 15 or 20 minutes. They're bored out of their mind, and you're dragging it out in a way that's unhealthy for the group. It's not going to be a very fun game night, because what the players are going to remember from that is that they spent 15 or 20 minutes sitting around twiddling their thumbs doing nothing. And as opposed to doing the toggle method, where everyone has had an equal amount of time, and even though in the larger scheme, it's the same amount of time has passed, right? But it's been broken up into smaller increments that people don't notice as much, and they don't mind as much, right? Let a person's mind wander for 2 minutes, not 15 or 20, okay? And you're going to have a very different feel at your table at the end of that game session. The players are going to walk away feeling much more satisfied with the game night, okay? So that's important. Here's a good one. And I talk about this a little bit in my book, Xenoplicity, in the Game Masters chapter, the director chapter. Be okay murdering your babies. Okay, it's a writing expression, gets used a lot, and then the idea is that you may think something is beautiful and wonderful. It might be your little baby, such a cool idea, but then when you give it over to the players and you expose them to it, they're not interested. They could care less. Don't take that personally. Okay, that's just the way it is. There might be something that you think's like a silly, stupid, or dumb idea, but when you pose it to the players at your table, they love it. You have to be okay with if an idea, even if you think it's awesome and you think it's so cool, if your players don't think it's cool, don't shove it down their face. Back off of it. Let them ignore it. Let them get around it. Let them bypass it. You can always kind of rework and retool that idea in a way that maybe they will bite at later. Maybe they will take an interest in it at a later time. But if they're not interested in pursuing a certain thing, it's a mistake to try to like force them to accept it. Don't do that. That's just not cool, because at the end of the day, the goal is to have everybody be engaged. And if people aren't interested in your idea, they're not going to engage with it. They're going to do whatever they can to bypass it or shorten it and shortcut it. And so it's a mistake to take that personally. It's a mistake to force them down a path that they don't want to go down. Okay, so that's the wrong approach. As a game master, you don't need to know all the rules of a game. It's a mistake to think you do. You should be confident with the lore and setting of whatever it is you're playing. To be able to make sure you're painting the proper picture and setting the right tone at the game table. As a game master, you need to have a basic understanding of the rules, not all of them, but you need to understand the spirit of the game and the general idea and feel that the system is trying to get across. Understand the theme and the spirit and how the core mechanics work, and then you can make judgment calls and just rules on the fly as needed in the game session. It's a mistake to think you have to understand every aspect of the game to be able to run a session. And if that's your mentality, a lot of times it's going to prevent you from ever getting started in the game master role. So don't overthink it. Don't overthink it. You will probably be harder on yourself than your players will. And a lot of times, it's been my experience that I've came away from a game session and I've thought, man, that was rough, or man, that was really kind of difficult, or it didn't go the way I wanted it to. I don't know if the players all had fun. And then at the end of the game session, even though that's my feeling, that's my intuition, everyone at the table is like, dude, that was awesome. And I'm thinking like, what? Like, what? That blows my mind, right? But it's a mistake to let your critique and your criticism of yourself get in the way of the players just having fun. because you'll probably be harder on yourself than your players will ever be on you, and you will notice and understand that maybe something wasn't done right. Maybe you have to make a judgment call because you don't know a rule, and you might be a little self-conscious about it. But depending on the game you're playing and the players you're playing with, they may not even know that that was a judgment call or a house rule, especially if they haven't read the book themselves or they're not super into the system yet. They may just run with it, and they go, man, that was cool. I didn't know the system could do that. And you're like, well, it can't, but you don't need to tell them that. Just let it sit. Now, it is good to clarify rules at the end of a session. Like if you know you screwed up and you know that you made the wrong decision and you went against the way a main part of the game goes, and you want to correct that, then just at the end of the game, in the wrap up, just say, hey guys, look, like I'm in a judgment call on this because I wasn't for sure in the moment. I didn't want to open up the book, but this is actually a little off from what the rules actually state. So this is what the rule is, and going forward, that's what we'll do. Again, guys, at the end of the day, most of this game is just communication, just communicating with other people at the table. It's a social game. It's a game of communication. And so if you treat it as such and you just use just general social skills to have conversations with players, they're not gonna beat you over the head. They're happy just to play the game and have someone game master for them. So don't overthink it. And don't be a perfectionist, just run with it, just have fun with it. Again, have enough understanding of the core mechanics and the spirit of the game that you can just feel comfortable making some judgment calls, and you'll learn and become better at the system the more you play the game. And that's true for every game, any game out there. The more you do something, the better you're gonna get at it. And it's just you'll get more experienced and more confident with practice. There's a lot that I could say further, but it doesn't need to all be in one video. Let me know what you guys think. Is there anything that you want to add to that? Put it in the comments below.